Tua Tagovailoa led the league in passing, got paid, okay?
This is a great story that I think is going to pay off for them tenfold.
There's still doubters who say he needs to prove he's worth the money.
This is a guy who's never won a playoff game in a big spot.
Are the Dolphins legit Super Bowl contenders?
No.
When they win, it's Tyreek. When they lose, it's Tua.
In the ground game, I need to see Devon Achane. I need to see Raheem Mostert. And I need to see somebody else besides Tyreek command that respect from opposing defenses.
Does anybody think that Tua has proved that he's a $50 million a year player? Not a chance.
You can't win in football if you need warm temperatures to do it.
Mike McDaniel believes in him. Mike rehabbed this dude. Tua was broken under Brian Flores.
Tua Tagovailoa isn't holding back his disdain for former coach Brian Flores any longer. The Dolphins quarterback opened up about Flores in an interview on the Dan Le Batard show on Monday, calling him, quote, a terrible person. Flores, who comes from the Bill Belichick coaching tree, was the Dolphins head coach from 2019 to 2021, and the team drafted Tua before his second season with the number 5 pick in the 2020 NFL Draft. Here's Tua on his former coach versus his now coach, Mike McDaniels.
To put it in simplest terms, if you woke up every morning and I told you you suck at what you did, that you don't belong doing what you do, that you shouldn't be here, that this guy should be here, that you haven't earned this right, and then you have somebody else come in and tell you, dude, you are the best fit for this. Like, you are accurate. How would it make you feel listening to one or the other? And you hear it more and more, you start to actually believe that. Basically been, 2 years of training that out of not just me, but, a couple of the guys as well that have been here since my rookie year.
All right, Shannon, you know what? I try to lead with love, speak life into people, but I'm not a football coach. What's your reaction to Tua's comments?
Well, I'm not surprised. Stephen A., as a parent, you probably understand this as well as I do. A lot of times we parent the way we were parented. Sometimes when our parents yell at us, we turn around and yell at our kids. And so Brian Flores grew up, as Molly mentioned, under Coach Belichick. And the same thing happened to Josh McDaniels. That's how he coached. He yelled, he screamed, he basically told the players they were less than, and eventually it gets old. At the end, and I understand some players I wanted to be coached. Stephen A., I told all my coaches, I want you to coach me hard, but I am not going to let you curse at me. I am not going to let you disrespect me, because I believe everybody deserves a certain level of respect. But when you go overboard, and I get it. Brian Flores wanted Justin Herbert. Stephen Ross wanted Tua. Obviously, the owner wins out over the head coach. And so I don't get what Brian Flores, if what Tua is saying is true, I don't get what he got out of trying to break him. To break him, to build him up, you have to understand as a coach, you cannot coach everybody the same. My college coach told me this. He said, son, I'm going to treat all of you guys fair, but I'm not going to treat you the same. And so while you trying to beat Tua down, you're breaking his confidence. And I'm sure, because for the longest, people thought Tua was going to be a bust. They thought he was a bust. Mike McDaniels comes in. He leads the league in passing. He throws 29 touchdowns. He gets them into the playoffs. Yeah, I want to believe what Tua has said, because we've seen other coaches from that Belichick tree treat players like this, talk to players like this. I happen to be very good friends with a lot of people that were still in the Broncos organization when Josh McDaniels was there. And this is verbatim. This is exactly how he treated quarterbacks, how he treated a lot of the players. But the way the human mind works, Stephen A., somebody can say something, 1,000 great things, but our mind is focused on the one negative thing that we heard. So just imagine, you heard 1,000 negative things. Your mind is not going to go to the one time, the positive thing that person says. So, yeah, it's sad that Tua had to go through this. I think he's in a better place. I think he's a better quarterback because of it. And sometimes we need someone to pick us up after we've been beaten down.
Well, let me say this, Shannon, a couple of things. Number one, I remember I'm at Winston-Salem State, just to make you laugh, and I came there with chronic tendonitis in my right knee by the time I arrived at Winston-Salem. So, damn it, I mean, before I cracked my kneecap in half, I was limping around, for crying out loud. And Coach Gaines used to sit up there every day. He said, boy, you know I'm from Kentucky. You know what we do to horses in Kentucky that's limping around all the time? We shoot them. That's what he would say. At least once a week, he would tell me that. You know, in other words, damn, you're always hurt, okay? So I get where, you know, you got those old school kind of coaches like a Brian Flores that worked 15 years under Bill Belichick, and you could imagine the kind of things that he may have said. Tua Tagovailoa has no reason to lie. Let me throw that out there. That's number one. Number two, I'm not going to accuse him of lying. Now, initially, when I heard about the story, before I saw what Tua had said to Dan Le Batard, I said to myself, wait a minute, why are you bringing up Brian Flores? I mean, the man has moved on. You know, he isn't a head coach, can't get a head coaching job in the National Football League, in the National Football League. Let sleeping dogs lie, per se. But when Dan Le Batard asked him the question, and he answered it the way that he did, he still seemed a bit restrained. In spite of what he said. I mean, he still seemed a bit restrained, but articulated, I thought very honestly, what he was going through. He said, when you wake up every day and somebody is telling you you're no good, and here's what really resonated with me, when he said somebody else should be here, not you. Now you're Brian Flores, you got a problem. Because what happened is that you got the owner, Stephen Ross, who wanted Tua. You clearly wanted Justin Herbert. Most of us would believe that was the right decision, but Tua didn't make that call. The owner did.
Right.
And you took it out on Tua.
Right.
All right, based off of what Tua is saying, if what he is saying is correct, and there's really no reason to deny it. And I'm looking at some of Tua's numbers his first season, 13-8 record, 66% completions, average 194 yards passing per game, 89% passer rating, benched twice for Ryan Fitzpatrick when he was inserted into the lineup by Brian Flores. The only pushback that I get when people want to lean on what we've seen from Tua since Mike McDaniels arrived. Listen, I respect Mike McDaniels. I think he's a damn good coach, but could we put stuff in proper perspective? Shannon, last time I checked, the cheater himself, Tyreek Hill, wasn't playing for Brian Flores. That brother was playing for Mike McDaniels. Right. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, it ain't like Tua had Tyreek Hill available to him when Brian Flores was coaching. So let's pump the brakes on that part. You want to talk about Brian Flores and the kind of man that he was as a coach coaching you? I get that. But for people to use that as an excuse to piggyback off of that, look at the last 2 years and say, without Brian Flores, look at Tua. Well, how about with Tyreek Hill?
Devon A-Chain, I think he had
A-Chain, yeah, that's right, exactly. Okay, so I'm looking at that and the weapons that you have available to you. Don't come to me with no Mike McDaniels compared to Brian Flores. Come to me with Tyreek Hill and A-Chain and those brothers. Come to me with them, and I'm listening.
Yeah. Stephen A., I think the biggest thing is that you have to learn to understand how to speak to each individual player so you can reach down inside of said player and pull out the best of player. Stephen A., I got 3 kids. My oldest daughter, I could talk to her in a stern voice and she would get it. My other 2 kids, I couldn't. And so I had to learn how to talk to each kid to get my point across without breaking kids' spirit. And so that's what Brian Flores, if he's ever back in a position and he can become a head coach again, you're going to have to learn. You're not Coach Belichick. And you see, once Coach Belichick started to lose, I'm not so sure his message resonated like it once did. See, that message will resonate if you got Tom Brady, who's the ultimate general to back you up. Because you could, he's talking to Tom like this. And Tom was okay being coached that way. You're terrible. We can find a guy at Foxborough High School that can do that. What are we doing, Brady? But everybody can't take that. I don't believe you could coach Peyton Manning like you coached Tom Brady. And you couldn't coach Patrick Mahomes like you coached Peyton Manning. So you have to learn your players. Who can I talk to? Who can I give a kick in the butt? Who do I need to pat on the back? And who can I make a joke with to get said point across.
Yeah, that's absolutely true because that might be, I mean, based off of what Tua is telling you, that might explain why Brian Flores had a tough time. And then remember, he talked about he was trying to sue. I don't know what the status of that case is, but he was trying to sue the Miami Dolphins, proclaiming some things that we've gotten into on this show as well. So when you hear Tua say some of those things, then it adds credence to why Brian Flores had trouble landing another head coaching job. But I don't want to let Mike McDaniels and Tua off the hook in this regard. 10-1 against losing teams last year. 1-6 against winning teams, Shannon.
Yeah.
And on top of it all, in weather, Shannon, I don't know if you know this stat.
Including the playoffs.
Including the playoffs. Shannon, I don't know if you know the stats. Do you know in 11 games with the Miami Dolphins playing in 40-degree temperature or less, what their record is? Did you know? Do you know that?
Not good.
0-11 in 40 degrees or less over the last couple of years or so. I mean, damn. That's pretty damn sad. So I want to hear about Brian Flores when it comes to that. You understand what I'm saying? He ain't controlling the weather.
Yeah.
All right, let's be clear.
Until Stephen A., until that number changes, our perception of the Miami Dolphins isn't going to change. Yes, they're fast break offense. Yes, they have Cheetah. Yes, they have A-Chain and Mostert and Waddle. Yeah, they're phenomenal. But until they find a way, now, unless they're going to have home field advantage throughout, and it's going to be 75 and sunny throughout the playoffs in Miami, they have an excellent chance. But until they change that narrative, nothing else matters. Nobody cares about Tua throwing for 4,600, 5,000 yards. Tyreek, the number one player in the NFL, rightfully so, and 18, 19, 2,000 yards receiving. But until you reverse that in inclement weather, when the weather gets below a certain point, you guys don't play well. When you go on the road and in the playoffs, you don't play well. When you play top-tier teams, well, when you get to the playoffs, hell, all the teams are top tier. You ain't playing no teams that are bottom feeders. You're playing top tier. So until that narrative change, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to what you went through, and I'm sure a lot of people are. The 2 years that you had under Coach Brian Flores. But until you guys change that around, nothing else is going to change about how we perceive the Miami Dolphins.
The only chance to win, listen, they haven't been to the Super Bowl since Dan Marino took them in 1984, okay? Bottom line is this. They got to have the best record in the AFC, and they have to have home field advantage where the road to the Super Bowl comes through Miami. It is entirely possible that they will be playing in 75-degree weather or better in Miami.
Well, that's a tall task when we're talking best record in the AFC.
That's what I'm saying. That's what they got to do.
So he could go.